courage, and justice. The story of Gerald Thompson. Welcome to Life Tells Stories, a channel dedicated to sharing impactful stories of human resilience, the pursuit of justice, and moments that change lives. Today, we're diving into a dramatic real-life confrontation between an everyday jogger and a misguided police officer that escalates into a dangerous standoff. The twist: the jogger turns out to be a retired U.S. Attorney General, and karma arrives in full force. What happens when those sworn to protect fail to do so? Watch as justice takes a surprising turn, and discover how one man's courage set things right. Have you ever witnessed injustice firsthand? Would you step in and speak up, even if it could be dangerous? Let us know in the comments. If you find this story inspiring, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Life Tells Stories for more incredible narratives that reveal the truth behind the headlines. Meet Gerald Thompson, a retired U.S. Attorney General. At the age of 68, Gerald believed that staying active was vital to both physical and mental well-being. It was his ritual to jog the quiet streets of Riverdale, a small suburban community where neighbors greeted each other warmly, and the local bakery always smelled of freshly baked goods. On this particular Thursday, what started as an ordinary morning run took a dark and unexpected turn. Gerald was jogging near a narrow alleyway by the old bakery when a faint cry caught his attention. He looked up and saw a frail elderly woman being assaulted by two young men. They were trying to snatch her purse and rip off her bracelet. Without hesitation, Gerald shouted, "Hey, leave her alone." The young men paused momentarily, seemingly shocked by his audacity. Gerald stepped forward, his fists clenched, and the criminals ran off into the shadows like cowards. Gerald hurried over to the elderly woman, who was visibly shaken and clutching the torn purse strap. "Thank you," she whispered through sobs. "They took everything." Gerald comforted her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. Just as he began to reassure her, a police cruiser sped towards them, tires screeching to a halt. Gerald exhaled in relief, expecting that the situation would soon be under control. Officer Mike Burnett exited the police cruiser, his hand on his holster, his gaze sweeping across the scene before landing on Gerald. With no hesitation, Burnett shouted, "Step away from her." Confused, Gerald tried to explain, "Officer, I was just helping her." Those young men took off down the alley, but Burnett wasn't interested in explanations. "I said step away. Hands where I can see them," he barked. The elderly woman tried to defend Gerald, but Officer Burnett cut her off abruptly. It was clear he had already decided that Gerald was the threat. What could have been a straightforward explanation suddenly turned into a dangerous confrontation, and Gerald knew he had to tread carefully. Gerald kept his hands raised, trying to remain calm while addressing Officer Burnett. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding," he said, but the officer's aggressive stance and refusal to listen showed that things had escalated beyond reason. "What were you doing here, old man? Trying to make a quick getaway?" Burnett sneered, his eyes filled with suspicion and hostility. Frustration bubbled up in Gerald. He took a deep breath, trying to stay measured. He realized that the officer wasn't listening. This wasn't about reason, it was about control. The crowd that had gathered around them was growing by the second, and murmurs began to ripple through those watching. The elderly woman was in tears, begging the officer to understand. Despite all this, Burnett was dead set on treating Gerald as the perpetrator. Seeing no other way to defuse the situation, Gerald slowly reached for his pocket. "Don't move," Officer Burnett shouted, raising his gun. Gerald froze, maintaining eye contact. "I'm just reaching for my ID," he replied, his voice calm but authoritative. He carefully pulled out his identification badge, holding it up for the officer to see. The shiny gold emblem glinted in the sunlight. "Take a good look, Officer Burnett," Gerald said, his tone now firm. The words on the badge read, United States Department of Justice. The crowd gasped, and Burnett's face turned a deep shade of red as he processed the words engraved on the badge. "My name is Gerald Thompson. I am the former U.S. Attorney General," he said clearly, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The realization hit Officer Burnett like a ton of bricks. His stance slackened, his grip on his firearm loosening. "Sir, I didn't know," Burnett stammered, visibly shaken. The crowd erupted in murmurs of disbelief. "You didn't know because you didn't ask," Gerald replied, his voice measured but stern. "You made dangerous assumptions, Officer Burnett. Assumptions that could have cost me my life." The elderly woman finally stepped forward, emboldened by Gerald's authority. "He's telling the truth," she said, her voice quivering but determined. The tension was palpable, but the truth had come out, and the crowd's disapproval of Officer Burnett's actions was evident. Within minutes, additional police units arrived in response to calls from concerned onlookers. Sergeant Peters, Burnett's superior, stepped out of one of the cruisers. "What's going on here?" he demanded, taking in the scene. The officer with his gun drawn, the elderly woman in tears, and Gerald standing tall, his badge still in hand. Gerald handed over his badge, recounting the events in a calm and concise manner. Sergeant Peters listened, his expression growing increasingly grim as Gerald detailed Officer Burnett's actions. Peters turned to Burnett, his voice stern. "Burnett, is this true?" The officer nodded, unable to meet his superior's gaze. The crowd watched in silence as Sergeant Peters made a decision that was both swift and just. "Officer Burnett, you are hereby placed on administrative leave," Sergeant Peters announced, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Hand over your gun and badge." The crowd murmured in approval, phone still recording as Officer Burnett handed over his equipment, his face pale. He was escorted to a waiting vehicle, the weight of his actions evident in his expression. The elderly woman approached Gerald, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank you for standing up for me and for yourself," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Gerald nodded, giving her a gentle smile. "Justice isn't just about courts and laws," he said. "It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard." This is where we want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a moment of injustice like this? What would you have done if you were in Gerald's shoes, or if you were a bystander in that crowd? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters, and it's through discussion that we can bring awareness to the importance of true justice. Gerald's story wasn't just about standing up for himself. It was also about the power of a community witnessing the truth, the crowd's reaction, the recordings, the voices demanding justice. All of these played a crucial role in ensuring that Gerald's story wasn't twisted into something it wasn't. In today's world, where everyone has a camera in their pocket, public accountability is more important than ever. The eyes of the people ensured that Gerald wasn't just another victim of a power-hungry officer. Gerald resumed his jog that morning with a new kind of respect from those who witnessed the incident. He hadn't set out to make a statement, but his actions had done just that. The respect he earned wasn't for his title or his past position, but for the courage he showed in the face of injustice. Officer Burnett faced immediate consequences, and the lesson was clear. Abuse of power will not go unnoticed or unchecked. Gerald's story is a powerful reminder that justice isn't just the responsibility of the courts, it's the responsibility of each and every one of us. Whether it's standing up for someone in need, challenging wrongful authority, or simply making our voices heard, we all have a role to play in ensuring a fairer, more just society. In conclusion, this story of Gerald Thompson and Officer Burnett serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked authority and the importance of standing up for what is right. The courage it takes to challenge authority, especially in moments of high tension, is something we should all aspire to embody. We must hold those in power accountable and never be afraid to demand justice when we see injustice. If this story inspired you, please like the video, Share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to Life Tells Stories for more tales of courage, justice, and the human spirit. Every like and every comment helps spread these important messages to more people who need to hear them. Let's stand together for what's right. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.